and welcome to Crafts and Crime. I'm Amy.
I'm Elaine.
And as always, we have a craft and a crime.
Woo!
So we, of course, we always try to record as much as possible, but we kind of had to take a little break because I got sick.
And then I just don't feel right.
Yeah.
I have like a sinus thing going on because of fall allergies.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like really...
Oh, it's killing Jack right now. He had to take Claritin yesterday.
Gross. And then I keep forgetting to take my allergy pill. And I'm like, even with these headphones, I was like, oh, they're pushing on my glands. And it's like the pressure.
Yeah. I know. I wasn't feeling... Well, Jack wasn't feeling good last week. And then...
it went through your house.
Yeah. And then it hit me and Avery.
Yeah.
And it was like the flu or something. So I was pretty much down for like a day. And then the next day I was feeling better. But like you said, I totally should have taken more time off. But I didn't. And I was doing my side gig and should not have taken more orders for, the laundry orders. And I did. But I got a good payday. So, but I wasn't sick when I did it. I was just like, I'm tired. And yeah, the sick had already like passed. But I probably should have like taken a week off. But, yeah, and then, oh my gosh, we've had a lot happen because...
oh my God.
The kitten from yesterday. Oh, the
kitten. Yeah. My husband was getting something out of the car, and he walked up, and he was just about to come up the front stairs, and he yelled at me. He's like, hey, there's a little kitten out here. It looks just like Geppetto. And I was like, what? It's like Geppetto. And I was like, oh. And I walk up and I look right at it. And I was like, oh my gosh, Figaro. And it's the tiniest, cutiest, little fluffiest baby. We thought it was a girl at first, but it's because you palpated his testicle area.
Yeah,
because he's so little, they're not out. But it was like hard too because he's like really wispy, but he's so freaking cute.
He does not like other cats and dogs.
No, and I'm thinking he probably had a bad experience outside because I'm telling you, I swear I heard a kitten crying Saturday night. But I thought I had seen these kids coming up the street, and I thought they were carrying. I was like, oh, they probably have a kitten. And so now I'm thinking that it's been outside at least since Saturday.
That's like almost a week because tomorrow's Saturday.
Yeah, so but yeah, he seems super sweet enough, but I think he's just scared. Yeah. So the animals are freaking him out, and so we are actively looking for his owners. Yeah. Because he's like clean and he smells cute and he's really sweet. And kittens that live outside, they are feral at that age. There is no walking up to you.
It's either he's someone's pet, and I've posted everywhere,
or somebody just dumped him.
Yeah,
because they couldn't find a home for him.
Unfortunately, in our area, that happens a lot with puppies and kittens and stuff because. Like by the park and stuff, they'll dump them, and so it's like he could have just wandered over onto our street. Yeah, but
so we took care of him overnight, and we all been kind of socializing him, and he's sweet on his own, like being held by himself. He's very sweet, and he likes to just hang out. But the other animals definitely scare him. The chickens don't.
That's so
They just been balking around all behind him, going crazy because I haven't been letting them out unless I'm there. And he's doing awesome. He's just in his little Heidi house right now hanging out, and when he sees me, he like pops out and cries a little bit, and I was like, you're not mine.
I know,
but it's funny because guess who wants to keep him?
Kurt.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
But he's like, no, it's totally fine. He's like, that's awesome that you guys are trying to find him his home, but we do have a home lined up. Yeah, only if the owner doesn't step forward, which I don't think they're going to.
I don't think so,
because like people who are looking for a cat are going to be looking for
everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. I would. That's exactly what I would do.
All the local groups, and that's what I did. Is I posted. And I've searched for like lost kitten or missing kitten or, or cat and kitty. I've searched all the keywords and I can't find anything.
And I think it's kind of perfect because I think he's so meant for my friend. I think it's going to be awesome for her little family. And he's so freaking cute. And they don't have any other pets.
Yeah. And he needs to be like an only pet as of now because he's just, he's terrified of all the cats and he hisses.
Yeah, for sure.
And like I said, he got really spooked. I think one of the cats caught him by surprise, and he got my chin.
Oh, no.
And I was like, ow, dude.
Oh, God, little baby kitten razor nails.
It was like 2 puncture, and it bled so bad. It was like,
because it's so sharp, it slits it.
Yeah, so he just got spooked, but he's I'm like,
and then
oh yeah
we went on an adventure today, and me and you and Troy, we all went on a long 45-minute drive
Yeah.
each way to pick up my daughter's new pet snake.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a ball python, and she was previously named Wednesday, which she's keeping as the middle name now. But it's Victoria from the Corpse Bride.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, she's like so cute, and as soon as we got her settled, she like came out and drank water, and that was adorable.
That was cute, but
Super cute. And then she like went around a little bit, and then she's back in the hiding since
hole,
before
yeah.
I came here. Yeah.
Yeah, I drove with a snake in my truck. I'm not
And
opposed.
the door opened.
Yes, the door opened on the way because when
It's
we
a slidey door.
yeah, when we opened it up so Troy could grab it out of the bag to carry it in the house, I was like, oh my god, the door's open. It was just
Luckily for you, all the commotion, there's no way she would have come out.
She's just hiding in her little cubby. But yeah, I can't believe I drove with a snake in my car.
She's big too.
She is big.
I mean, it's funny because she could get a little tiny bit bigger.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really funny because they're like, they have the smallest, squishiest little heads,
Mm-hmm.
and then their bodies are big. And God, she's probably like, I'm all like this big around with my hands,
She's like the size of
like
my wrist.
a
No,
wrist,
a wrist, like a small wrist.
Yeah. And she's just, oh my gosh, my tummy always makes weird noises.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she's like so cute. She's so pretty.
Yeah.
And probably like, it's funny because it doesn't seem like it when snakes coil up. You know, they're called
Mhm.
ball pythons because they make a ball.
Mhm.
That's how they are comfortable. And that's how they retreat when they're scared, which is all the time.
Yeah.
You know, that's the funny part. Like, I have a tarantula also, and like explaining to people that like they're so shy and they're so fragile, like
Mhm.
they can die over anything. And but yeah, so like the snakes, they're so shy, they always want to hide and like curl up into a little ball. But she's probably, I would say, by the look, like 4.5 feet long.
Yeah, I was gonna say about 4 feet.
And I don't think she'll get any bigger than that. They like
Yeah.
usually top out at about that, maybe 5. And I do think that the females are a little bigger, but that's pretty common in the animal kingdom in general because they have to bear eggs. Because yeah, I don't remember if pythons, there's different snakes that give live birth. There's like
That's so
rat
weird.
snakes, I know, little noodly births, but
Yeah.
but a lot of them are in
I'm
eggs.
not opposed to snakes. I'm just not, as Avery would say, I'm just not a fan.
You know, and the thing
It's
is,
not my thing.
the other thing too is that they do not mind being held and stuff, but they like quiet. And
definitely not be good at my house.
they like quiet. And I mean, all kinds of people have different opinions on whether they are something that wants to be cuddled. How much attention do they seek from us? We really don't know. We can't gauge that. But you know, they do a lot of behaviors that are very curious, so they definitely don't mind their owners. But you don't really get a lot back from
when I
a
went
snake.
up to the tank and like looked at her. She like came up to the glass and
and
looked
she's
at
like,
me.
"What's happening?"
It's like,
you know,
hey,
but
who are you?
but I get it because like the thing is, they're kind of like just like here I am. It's
Yeah.
cute to look at, and I love holding them and stuff. But for them, it's not necessary. They and you know, you're not gonna get like happy cuddles like from a dog or something. But I will say, like, they do like to just be near you because you're warm and they find that comfortable. And so
Yeah.
I have a feeling Lenora's gonna end up needing a hoodie with a kangaroo pocket so that she can put her in the
Put her
front.
in there.
Because yeah, Lenora saved like over $100 for her. She's been working her butt off and saving all her money, and I had no idea. I felt so bad. And so my mom, it was so sweet. My mom, I think my dad too, like they helped out with what was left.
A little bit that she could.
Yes, and I'm so happy we were able to pull off the
Well,
surprise.
because this
She
was not a
thrilled.
purchase situation. It was not a rescue, a rehoming situation
Yeah,
from
yeah.
a woman who was having a baby. And so it was like she just didn't have the time and was realistic about the situation. And like, she needs to go with
And
the
it's
family
a cost
that can.
every 2 weeks that you have to do to feed them
So it's
consistently.
Yeah. So it was a rehoming thing. Not like you went to a
Yeah.
pet store and bought a snake. It's
No.
like, no, it was someone's pet that they just, you know, your life changes when you have a baby
Yes.
and it is what it is. And I know you don't.
I would rather find a home for an animal that's better suited than keep an animal that's making that's miserable,
Yeah.
or making one of your other animals miserable, which
Yeah.
was not the case, but
or your
it's
family
just,
members miserable, like when we
Yeah.
had Hank,
oh,
the
yeah.
pig. We had a pig, and he was great for about a year or so, and he got to his teenage years, and I have little kids, and he was just getting a little headstrong and rude, and and I knew,
They're
like,
strong.
yeah,
They're all muscle.
he bruised my shins so many times headbutting me.
And
And
little pig tantrums.
yeah, he would get so mad if I wouldn't let him in the laundry room.
And the thing is, it's because they're like as smart as like a 3-year-old.
Mhm.
So
and as stubborn as a 3-year-old too. So I just had to look at the situation realistically, and I was like, I don't have the space in the backyard to set up for him where we live now. So I was like, you know what? I bet you there's another family that can use a pig, and we did. We found someone who had 2 other pigs, and so she took him, and it was a good fit. So
that's awesome.
yeah, if it don't let
It
anybody
hurt.
guilt
No.
you into doing what's right for your family, because I can't tell you.
And better for that animal.
Yes, because I can't tell you how many people in that pig group tore me apart of like, you
Oh.
signed up for this and blah, blah, blah. I was like, well, yes,
Human
I did.
children are being
But my children
trampled.
are being knocked over
Yeah.
and bit. It's not, it's not like I would do the same thing with the dog. If my dog was biting my kids, I'd be like, you need to go to another family that doesn't have little kids.
Exactly.
Which is what we had to do with one of our dogs, that Doris, when she was biting.
yeah, that's
Oh my
right.
gosh, she was the worst. She just needed to be an only dog. She cannot be the third dog. She needed to be an only dog, and thankfully we found a family that raised a husky, and so
That's
are,
awesome.
Yeah,
they know
perfect.
the high energy situation.
Mhm. So they understand her needs. So yeah, so we just did a bit of a animal mission today, and
Too.
yesterday,
Because
and
we're
today
trying to
we're
find this
still-
kitten a home.
Yeah,
And, I think we found it already.
yeah, I think so. I was like, I guarantee you he was just dumped, which is really sad, but
It is so sad.
it does happen. But anyways, okay,
All right.
on to the rest of the podcast.
And it was barely any chickens.
I know, we
You're
only
welcome.
mentioned him once. Okay, so I told you how I was kind of getting stuck with my crafts, and
Mhm.
we
It
were
gets
just talking about
hard.
it. It does, because I'm like, man, I want to do this, but then I'm like, whoa, that's gonna be like a 3-part,
Oh, yeah.
craft, and so it's really hard to decide on what to do. And then in my case, usually I pick something where I'm like, oh, well, there's things that were before that then lead into this,
mhm.
and so and I don't want to hop around too much. But anyways, I decided to do I guess it's more of an art form,
Okay.
and it is petroglyphs.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Oh my God, we've totally seen
know.
some. We were together.
We were.
Sorry, I got excited.
I think that was like 14 years ago.
Yes,
Troy was like
a little
2.
bald-headed baby chasing after me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
We gotta
that's so fun.
post
We have to go back
I
there.
know. So we live near Petroglyphs, which I will get to in my
So we go
story.
through-
No, it's fine, because I was like, we totally went. We've seen them in person. I've touched petroglyphs in my
Yeah.
life. It's really cool. So this is more of like just a basic, like, history lesson, I guess, more so than a craft, because it is a craft. It's an ancient art,
Mhm.
So for those of you who do not know what petroglyphs are, they are pictures made on stone by like carving, like pecking, just abrading the surface. So you're scratching off the surface of the rock.
Yeah.
And so the word petroglyph comes from the Greek word petros, which means stone, and glyphin, which means to carve. So to carve
Oh,
stone. So
that's
they're just
cool.
like etching into the stone. And there's petroglyphs all over the world. And when you look at petroglyphs, they're typically of like people or animals. We saw a lot of like the animals and petroglyphs and
Yeah.
stuff. But sometimes they can be totally abstract. And so there's a lot of theories of like, what were they used for? Were they a form of communication?
Yeah.
Are they part of a ceremony or like a religious like thing? Or are they there for religious reasons?
Yeah.
So it's all kind of like theory, like why are they there? So petroglyphs were created before modern civilizations, and so this shows the cognitive like evolution of humans over time, because then it's like we started to get smart to like do some art on some stones, and like
Mhm.
it'll stay there if you just scratch off the surface. Petroglyphs have been found dating back 10 to 12,000 years, and 7 to 9,000 years ago, pictographs and ideograms then started to make an appearance. So pictographs are different than petroglyphs. So pictographs are painted rock surfaces.
Oh, okay.
So
like with clay or plants.
Yes.
Okay.
And so I kept getting these like so mixed up. Petroglyphs are the stone etching, and that is what they date like way, way, way back. So before like painting on the surface.
Okay.
They have been found, these petroglyphs have been found in every single continent on Earth except for, I want to make a guess?
Antarctica.
Yes.
Sweet.
Yeah, Antarctica. That's the only place that there's no petroglyphs. The most petroglyphs were found in parts of Africa, Scandinavia, Siberia, Southwest North America, which is our region where we are, and that southern western region.
Yeah.
And Australia. So like I was talking about how they're created, the surface of the rock is removed by carving, sculpting, etc., just scratching it. And so a lot of times the rock surface will have a patina that is like darker than the inside of the rock, and so when that patina is scratched off, the lighter surface,
because like the minerals oxidize and stuff, like
and
metal.
So, yeah, and so the interior of that stone is then is what you see, and so that's why you could totally see that it's just the rock interior. As we talked about just a second ago, the meaning for the petroglyphs, everything we have is just theories. Looking at the like location, age, and like what the image is like helps provide clues, but it's still just all theories. There's no like set in stone. Not like this is why they're here. So there are many petroglyphs. I'm gonna mess up that word.
We haven't recorded in a little bit.
That appear to have like cultural or religious significance. They might represent like some sort of symbolic or ritual language, maybe that's like, is this some sort of communication? Petroglyphs from the Nordic Bronze Age in Scandinavia show reference to territorial boundaries between tribes, as well as possible religious meanings. So I think a lot of it is like, is this religious? That comes up at multiple times. The Siberian petroglyphs look like early form of runes, but it's like still maybe, like I said, everything's a theory. But what is crazy is how similar all these petroglyphs from all around the world are. They're all very similar.
We literally say it every single episode. We are all the same.
And we have been
forever.
Yes. So obviously a lot of them are influenced by like what is around them. You draw a tree, you draw a deer, you draw whatever, a mountain, and you draw your brother, whatever. It's everyone kind of does the same thing. But that's what I was saying, the overall style is the same across different like countries and continents. There is a theory that petroglyphs were carved by spiritual leaders like shamans in an altered state of consciousness.
Sweet.
Possibly under the use of hallucinogens. So that is another theory.
Yeah.
And
like bring back what you saw.
Yeah. So now I'm going to talk about some of them. Just go on to Wikipedia. There are literally like a million bullet points. They are all over the world. So I'm just going to kind of talk about some more well-known petroglyphs. Okay. So in Africa, there are many famous petroglyph sites. Tassil and Ager, I probably said that wrong, in Algeria, has rock paintings and other archaeological sites that date from Neolithic times. And this art shows, like I was talking about, your surroundings. It shows herds of cattle, large wild animals like crocodiles, and humans hunting and dancing. And so this art is similar to the pre-Nguni art of South Africa, and the region found in caves before the year 1200 CE. Quarta. I hate it when I can't say all the names right. On the east bank of the Nile River and the upper Nile Valley has Nubian sandstone formations. Now I'm like picturing sandstone, like a big giant thing of sandstone. And it has the first and earliest known petroglyphs in the North African region, dating all the way back to 19 to 15,000 BC. So the ancient city of Wadi Hamat in Gift, Egypt, there's a lot in Egypt also, has many carvings and
nice surfaces to write on.
These date back before like the earliest Egyptian dynasties to like all the way up to the modern era, including the only painted petroglyph known from the Eastern Desert and drawings of the Egyptian reed boats. So they, of course, their surroundings are drawing, their boats dated to like 4,000 BC.
So they carved it out, then painted it?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And so there's like, it's all over Africa. They're, like I said, they're all similar but different. And so some are carved and then painted and some are just painted. And other petroglyphs in Africa, like in different regions, will have like camels, gazelles, giraffes, like animals. It's typically across all continents. That's what people would draw. Think about it. You're hunting your animals and stuff. And so it's you're drawing your hunters and
what's around you.
And, what happened today? Let me draw it. Let me carve it out of the stone. So Asia is huge. It's really large. So there's a wide variety of petroglyphs throughout that continent. Hong Kong actually has 8 different sites containing petroglyphs.
Oh, cool.
The Edakal caves in Wyanad, I don't know, Kerala in India, because India is in Asia.
Yes.
Date back around 4,000 BC. And in the caves are carvings of humans and animals, as well as tools used by humans.
Oh, cool.
So they could kind of see like what they used to hunt or whatever. And then once again, there's also symbols, which could indicate that they were like a civilization, trying to communicate or whatever. So the oldest of these petroglyphs may date back over 5,000 years ago. And the
it sounds like you're on the right track.
Banggude petroglyphs in South Korea are in an isolated, like forested area, and there are 3 major panels in the area that measure 3 meters high and 10 meters in length, and they all have petroglyphs on them. And then in Iran, there's some rock drawings that were found in December 2016. They weren't discovered until then in Iran. And they may be the oldest drawings ever discovered, with one cluster of those drawings being 40,000 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. Now we can move to Australia. So in Murujuga in Western Australia, the world's largest and most important collection of petroglyphs can be found.
Oh, cool.
And Aboriginal rock paintings may even date back to the Ice Age.
Sweet.
So really old. There are over 1 million petroglyphs, and many of them show the extinct Tasmanian tiger.
Oh, cool.
So there's some really cool petroglyphs of Tasmanian tigers. The Sydney rock engravings have images of, once again, people, animals, symbols, and all of this was drawn into the sandstone. Once again, sandstone. I'm just thinking the types of rocks they choose. And these sites are actually considered sacred by Indigenous Australians, and they are similar to the petroglyphs of Native Americans, but with their own style, and it's unique to that area. Like most cases are. It's just like it's unique to their area. So there are, now we're moving to South America. There's a bunch of famous petroglyphs in South America. Cumbimayo in Peru is where the ruins of a pre-Columbian aqueduct, approximately 5 miles or 8 kilometers in length. And there's petroglyphs on the aqueduct and then in the surrounding areas. So like actually on the aqueduct,
cool.
Which is interesting. The Corintige, I don't know, basin in Suriname has a lot of petroglyphs as well. And what is interesting about the ones in South America is they are all found near water, and they cannot be connected to a specific group of indigenous people. So they're just kind of like, well, there's these drawings here. Like, we don't know who did them.
Maybe they were passing through or something.
Maybe, I don't know. But there
because
was
everybody,
aqueduct,
you got to stop
so
by
like
water before you go through, so you can refill
True.
your like cow bladders or whatever.
Yeah. So it just goes to show it's the same as like any, civilization.
Yeah.
It's people. Yeah, it could be passing through. That's interesting. I didn't think about that. But yeah, once again, everything's a theory. So in Europe now, there are sites in France, Ireland, Sweden, Ukraine, and England. Now, this was really cool, and I will post a picture of this because it was really pretty. It's called the Cup and Ring Rocks in Northumberland, England. They're very unique. And these rocks have like a concave depression, no more than like a few centimeters across, and pecked into like a rock. So it's like they peck into it, and there's like a center in it, and then there's like rings, concentric circles etched around it.
Fancy.
And then sometimes there's like a little channel, like a linear channel that like gutters that lead out from the middle. It's really cool. I was like,
blood sacrifice.
Oh, I did not think of that.
Druids.
You know what I thought about?
Virgin sorry.
I thought about the thing with the quarter at the mall.
Those were so fun, let me tell you.
Yeah, and then you catch it before it like goes in the hole, and then you do it again.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant just that they couldn't have the money.
No.
So you could do it as many times as possible.
So then the game is like you put your quarter down and it goes down the little cylinder thing, and then you catch it at the bottom, and then you do it again. And then if you can't, you see how many times you could catch it. But anyways, that was just me.
It's fun.
So yeah, these are interesting because it's like these little circles, and it was kind of cool. So in Italy, there are rock drawings in the subalpine area that consist of about 350,000 petroglyphs.
Whoa.
So a lot.
That's cool.
And these were drawn by members of the Kumuni tribe dating from 8,000 BC. And the petroglyphs show, once again, hunting, but also ritual scenes, as well as some scenes of zoophilia.
Ew.
Yeah. So for those that don't know, it's the stuff with the animals that you shouldn't be doing because it's bad.
Gross.
Yeah. And then the rock cavings at Alta in Norway were discovered in 1972.
Wow.
This is crazy. It's like they don't find these things until later.
Not that long ago.
And there are more than 5,000 carvings across several different sites in Norway. And the main site at I'm not going to say this right. Malokata. Whatever that is.
It's a thought that counts. You're trying.
It's just outside of Alta. I should have just said that. It has around like 3,000 individual carvings.
Ooh.
So a lot. Not as much as like, the alpine area, the subalpine area with 350,000. That was a lot. So this site has actually been turned into an open air museum. So like you just can walk through and look at all these petroglyphs. And the earliest carvings in this area date to around like 4,200 BC, with most recent ones dating around 500 BC. So they did it for a while. These images are once again hunter-gatherers, controlling herds of reindeer, boat building, fishing, and rituals involving bear worship and other animals. There is, once again, not a lot known about the culture that made these carvings. So, like, you can't really tell a whole lot. Now we move to North America. Now, the reason why I save this for last is because North America has more petroglyph sites than any other continent. We have the most sites. A large amount of petroglyphs are located in the southwestern United States.
Whoop,
it's us. And they are protected by the national park boundaries. And Jack was actually just telling me that the area that we went to, they kind of changed that whole area and like not fenced it off, but like protected a lot of it so you can't go directly up to the petroglyphs anymore.
Oh, that's a bummer.
So just because people are assholes, so you know how that goes. So One of these places is, like I was just saying, where we went, the Northern Mojave in California. That's where we went, and my allergies killed me.
Oh my God, we were
so
all car
bad.
sick.
Yes.
I wanted to die.
Yeah, because it was kind of a
long
drive. Yeah. It was 2 cars, right? It was my car, me, Jack,
Yeah.
Troy, Colin went with us, my brother.
And then it was me, Mom, and Crystal.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we had anyone else. I think it was just
No, I think it was just us, yeah.
I was like, Jack would have been with you guys.
Yeah, I can't remember if Brad came with us or I think it was just Colin. It was just Colin. So yeah, that was fun. It was a hike, and it was the Salt Flat area. That was really cool. The towel that we like picked up, and it was all like crusty.
I just remember Troy, he was so excited. Like he was like crunching his own little footprints, and it was like fresh, and we were just running, and it was so fun.
It was pretty cool. And then the little hikes and all the flowers and the petroglyphs and stuff. It was so fun.
And those insane clusters of tent caterpillars. Colin and I were like, because they would like spasm. They're the worst, by the way. We're not harassing them. They're like literally foliage destroyers. Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
That's why they're in the desert.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, there are also sites, not just in California where we are, but there's also sites in Arkansas, Washington, Michigan, and Ohio. And the Jeffers Petroglyph site is in southwestern Minnesota with pre-contact Native American petroglyphs. So pre-contact meaning before, colonization came out here. So they are in the rock of the Red Rock Ridge, which is a 23-mile or 37-kilometer long Sioux quartzite outcrop that goes from this is in America. Why can't I? It's in the States. Watonwan? I don't know. County, Minnesota, to Brown County, Minnesota.
They're all Native American names.
Yes,
they're hard
I'm like,
to
I
say.
can't say
It's crazy how many of them are on the East Coast, and you're like, oh,
yeah, but a lot, like, yeah,
they're hard to say.
Yeah, so the surface of these rocks are about 150 feet or 50 meters by 650 feet or 200
Holy
meters.
Moly.
And it is surrounded by prairie lands. So it's just these like rocks and covered in petroglyphs. And in Albuquerque, New Mexico, there is a 7,236 acre monument or 2,928 square kilometers called Petroglyph National Monument, and it is protected and managed by the National Park Service and the city of Albuquerque.
Is ours protected here? It is,
yes,
right?
It
because
is.
it's part of the Joshua Tree Park.
It is.
Okay.
So they also, this National Park Service and the city of Albuquerque also protect, there's 5 volcanic cones, hundreds of like archaeological sites, and about 25,000 images carved by native people and early Spanish settlers.
Where is this?
How
far is this? We need to go.
New Mexico. It's New Mexico.
That sounds cool.
That's not that far from us.
It's a long weekend trip.
Yeah. So some of the images are animals, people, brands, and crosses, and other images in which the meaning was probably only known by the carver. So just like, I don't know what that is, but they probably know. Or knew when
they're like, I saw this really cool hole today.
Yeah.
You never know, right?
Exactly. I saw a snake in a hole.
And I loved it.
Yeah. So there are over 21,000 petroglyphs at the Three Rivers Petroglyph site in Three Rivers, New Mexico, and many of these can be seen from the trail, which is open to the public, and it goes for about a mile. And they were thought to be done by the Jordana Mogollon people between 1000 and 1400 CE. And this is once again protected by the Bureau of Land Management. And some of the carvings include Thunderbirds, which is in Native American mythology, it's a powerful like spirit in the form of a bird.
Yeah.
And which is funny because I was talking to my mom today because the air show's out in Newport, and she was talking about the Thunderbirds, and I was like, oh, I just did that in my research. So I was like, do you know what a Thunderbird is in Native American mythology? So Thunderbirds, dragonflies, turtles, and shamans. And that's kind of in the states region. Now in Canada, there's sites in Canada, British Columbia, Ontario, Nova Scotia, and Petroglyphs Provincial Park is in Peterborough, Ontario,
oh my God,
Canada.
Try to say that like
Petroglyphs Provincial Park in Peterborough, Ontario, Canada. And it has the largest collection of the ancient First Nations petroglyphs in Ontario. And they were created in the pre-Columbian era, and they represent aspects of the First Nations mysticism, including shamans, animals, and the Great Spirit. And these sacred stones are believed to have been carved by the Algonquian people between 900 and 1400 CE. And then, you know, there's also sites in Mexico and stuff. So just they're all, I could go on and on and on. I had to just kind of pick a little like handful from like each continent, because they're everywhere and they are all so similar but so unique and different according to like the, you know, the culture and the region and obviously their surroundings. You know, it's different. They're going to be carving something different in the jungle than they are in the desert. Different animals, different, you know, people, different plants, rituals, food, and plants. Yes. So, but they are all so similar, which is so cool. So I got a couple fun facts.
Yay!
So ancient rock paint was messy. So you had to grind up clay or minerals into dust and then mix it with a binder like
pee,
egg whites, egg whites, blood, or animal fat in order to draw on the stones. And rock art is more common in the desert, where dry weather helps preserve the paint on pictographs and keeps the carvings of petroglyphs from eroding away. So it's just dry and arid.
It's not running water past it.
So
and usually the rain they get is like one time a season, you know, so it's like one torrential downpour. That's
not just like
straight down in the ground. It just runs all way usually.
So I think that was like so cool when we went, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, these are so old and they're still here.
And we didn't go to that. We need to make another trip when the little ones are just a bit older, because it wasn't a dangerous hike, but it's like pokey. Like literally there's cacti and stuff.
There is.
It's just really crazy though, because it's like so cool to see. And we really didn't have to go that far. I mean, it was a drive, but
the drive, wasn't horrible.
We stopped at that funny little like western town because we all had to use the bathroom. Someone always has to use the bathroom. And then, but what we didn't do was they had I think it was one of the lava tubes here, and it was all crystals inside, but you had to do like a tour.
Yeah.
I
know.
I bet it's gypsum. It's gonna be like selenite, because that's like super common. Like a lot of salt is out here. So that was really cool, though.
Nice. Yeah,
that was a lot. Every time you're like, it's short. I'm like, you're full of shit.
That was only like 20 minutes.
Be quiet. No, it wasn't.
But
it was 25. But like. My next episode we're doing
next
it's
week
a bit
is
short.
Halloween.
And so I'm like, I say it's short, but at the same time, like, I'm like, well, all the little interjections we do and stuff is what ends up bulking it out. Or like I'll think of something that I meant to say or write down, but I'm like, it's always embarrassing. I'm like, it's short.
Well, mine was short in the page length from what I usually write, but but I knew we were going to talk a lot about our personal experience with you know, witnessing petroglyphs.
It was so cool.
It was really surreal. It's so weird. Like, you know, go into a museum and you see some old things and you're just like, wow, that's really old. But then like just so you're going on a hike and it's like, I can touch this really old thing that was like 10,000 years old or older. You know, it's like, it's really, it really is cool.
What do they say? I think they say we each have approximately like 16 or 17 great grandparents. Like that's how far it goes back. So I was like, that's a lot of grandpas ago.
Yeah.
But it is. And I've always been like a little, like I was like, that's probably selenite, but I've always loved rocks. And you just have to think of it this way. Even if it's like the ugliest rock you ever seen, it's so freaking old.
Yeah.
It's a chunk of this planet that fell off.
And that's, I think, what's really cool about petroglyphs is you're looking at these rocks that have been there forever. And with like all these giant sandstone formations and stuff like that, it's just sides of mountains and stuff that's been there forever. And all this artwork is just preserved there. That's been there for tens of thousands of years.
That came from someone that may not have had spoken word language yet.
Yes, they might have. Yeah,
and that's what they're showing each other is like what's going on.
And you just wonder what their life was. And you know, and like I said, in petroglyphs over time, it shows the use of tools and hunting, and so you can kind of see how these societies or cultures evolved or developed over the time into these more like modern civilizations.
Yeah.
So I thought it was cool. So I kept going back and forth, and I was like, I'm going to do it because it's kind of cool.
It is cool. And it involves painting and pigment
does.
stuff. Because, like,
it's
the conversations of the conversations, that's what these episodes are. And we've mentioned it before. It's like sometimes it's not as 100% factual as it could be, but pretty much this is like we're just chit-chatting. We did our best homework. We're sharing it together.
I'm going to share my sources and the show notes, and you can do your own research. You can... I encourage everyone, just type in petroglyphs or follow my show notes.
You probably have one near you.
Yeah. And just look at the pictures and how cool they are. Yeah. There's so many that are like colorful. There's some that are like, and the colors of the rocks make them different color. It's just, it's so cool. And I was just like looking at all these pictures.
That was fun.
Last night while I was snuggling the kitty, I was like, oh my God, at this one, look at that one. And I'm like, oh, it's a circle. It's so cool. So
that's really neat.
Take a look at ancient art. The ancient crafts. Yeah.
We will do it.
Yeah, do it. I encourage everyone to. It's really cool. Okay. You going to bring us down?
Oh, my God. The worst down.
Oh, no.
Sorry. But it's interesting because I've been stuck in, like, the Victorian era. I can't get out of it.
I like it. Because that's the one that I kind of don't like. Don't like to research because the lack of information.
Yeah, it is hard. And so, and I this one's really cool, but yes, it's really dark. So I will preface it. It's crimes against children.
Okay.
But it gets into a theme of what I have mentioned a couple of times previously in my past cases. Okay. So we are going to be talking about a woman named Amelia. She's born Amelia Elizabeth Hobley. And she was born in 1837. She had a really big family. There was 5 children. Okay. And her parents were master shoemakers. And while they weren't super rich, they did really well. And they lived in a little city called Pile Marsh, which is east of Bristol. It's so crazy because, see, we live in the United States. And so it's the United States, it's a country, and then the country has states. And I forget how differently it's broken up. Yeah. And so these are like, it's Slowy, it's Britain, but it's like, it's this city and this county. It's the same thing. And I was like, oh my God, there's so many of these.
Well, that's like here. And when I'm trying to teach the kids about, okay, what continent do we live on? What continent? It's like we live on North America and the United States, and California this is a state, and then this is the county, and this is the city.
This is a city. It's a lot, and it's the same way. So like, there's a lot of addresses. So, sorry,
no,
that's been on my mind. So, her parents are named Samuel and Sarah, and the problem with the family, the biggest struggle they deal with is that Sarah became critically mentally ill because she had a really long battle with typhus. So she went through a lot of fever, a lot of illness, and this is barely into the 1800s. There's not anything you can do. And Amelia was the one that ended up having to take care of her. And Sarah dealt with a lot of like blackout rages and fighting and throwing things, and Amelia was the one who had to take care of her. And Sarah died in 1848 when Amelia was only 9. So a child younger than that because the other ones were older a bit and working, and
so she was like really the youngest
sad.
Of all of them.
She was the youngest, so it was given to her, the responsibility. She was really, really smart, and she loved reading and poetry, but later on in her life, because her siblings were working, her mom was passed, her dad was working, she was sent to live with an aunt in her later early teen years. It's not actually given a time frame, to be an apprentice corset maker. And I know, I'm like, that sounds pretty cool.
That does sound cool.
Yeah. And but unfortunately her dad passed away in 1859, so like not even 10 years. So she's not even barely a teenager or late teenager, not even a real adult. And back then she was.
Well, I was like, back then it's a little different, like we were kind of talking about today with our kids just
back
getting
then,
older
like
and-
14, you're sent out to be a maid.
Yeah.
But it's sad, and it's still really hard for her.
Mhm.
Her oldest brother Thomas inherited the shoe factory though.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, by 2 years later, she was estranged from both of her other brothers, and her other sisters died.
Oh,
So she just experiences nothing but loss very early in her life, trauma and loss.
yeah.
And it's really hard for her. But she tries to continue. She's still really young. And in 1861, that makes her 21. She meets a man she moved to a street called Trinity Street that's in Bristol now. And she moved to the big city, you know, and she met and married a 59-year-old named George Thomas. And, I'm sorry, she was 24, so just a little bit older. And so they lied on the marriage certificate to lessen their age gap, because even then it was like, why are you married to this old dude?
Yeah.
So somehow he got away with deducting 11 years from his age. Yeah, 11 years.
I
Like,
don't
he
think
tried
our
to say he's
husbands would be able to
58, 48.
Get away with that.
And
I would definitely not be able to get away with that.
it's ridiculous. And she added 6 years to her age.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Which is more
30 and 48.
believable, but
Yeah, but even then, that's a bit of a gap.
He took 11 years off.
He took 11 years off his age, yeah, and she added 6. So now that Amelia, she has more security. Now she's married. She started training to be a nurse because she'd been taking care of her mother for so long anyway. And she met a woman that's a fellow nurse named Ellen Dane. She's a midwife. And Ellen said, one of the things you can do, and it's something that I do, is you can make money by allowing unwed mothers to live at your house. They can live at your house, and then you help them with the birth, and you keep the child to help find a home for, to adopt out. And this was a super common thing. And unfortunately, thanks to the Poor Law Amendment Act made in 1834, this removed, which I've talked about before, this removed all financial obligation to the father. So, too bad, so sad. Even though he had a hand in it, these illegitimate children had zero care besides the mother's care. So unfortunately, this led to the necessity of what we call baby farming.
Yeah.
Which it's because it's an adoption agency. It sounds horrific.
Yeah.
But it's an adoption agency, and basically you just raise babies as best as you can, and they pay you sometimes all the money at one time, or they pay like every week until the baby is adopted out. So you're paying for someone else, but it's a lot less than what, because they were also given a stipend from the government to do these things.
Okay.
So unfortunately, their troubles end up always being preyed upon. But in this way, the person that's taking the baby to care for them, if the person was wealthy, they would charge more. So they would charge more, about like 80 pounds, which is the equivalent of, like, it's an estimate, because surprisingly, trying to find the opposite of any other money other than United States dollars is a struggle. But it looks like about $3,000.
Oh, okay.
And so if the woman was poor, she would only charge them about 5 pounds, which was about $150.
Okay.
So she didn't take total advantage of them.
Yeah.
She could have, and she didn't. So Amelia has left her nursing career. She had a daughter, and the daughter's name is Ellen Thomas. And unfortunately, her husband George dies.
Oh, well, because he's old.
Because he's old. He died only 8 years later.
Oh.
Yep.
So he was like 60?
67.
Yeah,
67.
okay.
Yep. Which is about their life
Yeah,
expectancy was around then.
Yeah, at that time.
Yeah, anything past like 74 was pretty old.
Yeah.
So now it's just Amelia, and she's totally desperate, and this is when she decides to take the advice of her old friend, Ellen. And so she starts accepting babies into her care, but she takes more of the dark tips that were given to her from Ellen. So to calm babies that are crying a lot, what they would use was a opium syrup. And so they would keep the babies drugged and quiet, but also one of the side effects of opiates is a hunger suppression. So the babies wouldn't be as miserable because they're starving, because even back then everything was expensive and it was essentially a depression and it was hard.
Oh my gosh, I gave Lincoln melatonin once and it freaked me out because he just like fell asleep and I was like, I don't like this. I was just like, I get so scared. I can't imagine like drugging babies.
It's crazy. I know. And it's so strange too, because it's like even when you're like it's like the medicine that they recommend when like ear infections and stuff.
Take some cocaine, you'll feel better.
Exactly. Back then it was just so normal. And you could get these things so easily at the chemist.
Yeah.
So what would end up happening is, because of this suppression and the desire to eat, the babies will starve to death. And unfortunately, the times are so hard back at this point, even in a happy, loving home, babies could starve to death.
Yeah.
And so when the babies would pass away, the coroner would just call it, and this is a quote, debility from birth or the lack of mother's milk. So just the weakness of being born, not having breast milk. And so they would pass away. Like SIDS, they just knew like it sounds terrible, but it's like a failure to thrive baby, that that's what they pretty much
but really it was just a lack of being fed care.
Exactly.
A lack of being, do you remember during the pandemic when mothers were like freaking out trying to find formula because people were buying it all up? That's so disgusting. Oh my gosh, I know. I was like literally still I was still nursing Lily. I was like about to start donating my breast milk. Just
a lot of people did.
Yeah, because but I didn't have anybody near me like that. I knew that really needed it, but I just hated seeing that. I can't even imagine.
It's heartbreaking.
Just not being able to feed a baby. But I get it.
And then every other country stepped up and helped. And
but I can understand at that time it's like depression times
and so sometimes they would. To try to help ease the baby's pain, they would give them this syrup and a little bit of alcohol, or one or the other, to help their hunger pangs, because they were literally suffering. So unfortunately, it was hard. It was hard for good mothers. And
that's what made me think of it. I was like, we have good moms out here trying to just feed their babies,
apart,
and it's you can't.
And unfortunately, back then, these completely loving homes still could suffer, and so it was nothing. It was just a thing, unfortunately. So occasionally parents would come to check on these babies and they wouldn't be allowed to see them, or they were really too embarrassed to call the authorities and have to explain like, oh, well, I had an illegitimate baby with a married dude and I had to give the baby up, but like I just want to check on it, and they get shamed for it. So unfortunately they wouldn't really do this. And unfortunately, so she put ads in, and she would lie about like, oh, a happy couple who can't have kids, they want to adopt a precious healthy baby and help somebody out. Just adoption is what would be said. And just a few years later, in 1872, she got married again to a man named William Dyer, and this is the name she'll continue on with, Amelia Dyer. And she had 2 more children. Oh, wow. And it was crazy because that means she was like 45 and 47.
That is
having
crazy.
More children.
Well, that was like my grandparents.
Would die.
My dad was born when his brothers were all adults.
Oh, that's intense.
Yeah, he was the empty nester baby.
Oh, precious.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, she now is older. She's becoming impatient for the babies to pass away on their own. Oh gosh. So she has started to just straight murdering these babies.
I know this. I knew this could just be one of
one of how many?
One of, I don't know.
And unfortunately what she does is she uses what we know because we sew or know of sewing. You do. I don't that much anymore. Hand sewing sucks. Is she uses white edging tape. It's like bias tape. Yeah. So think of it, it's like a ribbon that's been folded in half and like pressed, and so you take it, you put the hem in the middle, and then you seam it, and it makes it look all pretty. The edge makes it look pretty. And so this is what she's using, white seamstress tape. And at this point now, the coroner that's writing out the death certificates is starting to be concerned about the amount of child deaths that are coming from her foster agency, essentially.
Yeah.
And so he finally calls the police. She's arrested, but she only ends up being charged with neglect because, unfortunately, there's no forensic evidence. And at, these times, the trying to calm the babies with medicine and these types of things.
Accidental overdoses,
exactly.
I'm sure, were rampant.
And yes. And so, unfortunately, without this proof, she just ends up getting,
a negligence charge.
And it's only, she's charged with 6 months of hard labor.
Ugh.
Now, I was actually really interested in this because I have talked about Victorian prison sentences before and a couple that had ended up being short. So I looked it up. So hard labor back then, this is actually an example from a prison records of a prison almost at this exact same time. Hard labor, one of the things would be walking on a treadmill, and you had to hold a bar up above your head, like holding it above you, and you're walking and pushing a wheel. And you had to do 10 minutes on and 5 minutes off for 8 hours a day.
Ugh.
And the equivalent was actually only about 1.5 miles or 2.4 kilometers. But these were not easy steps, and what they were doing was it actually powered machinery in the prison.
Yeah, I figured as much. I was like, that's got to be worth. It's not like, just go get your exercise. It's got to be a use for it. Yeah.
Yes. Well, this next one was completely pointless, which is interesting. It's called the crank. So the prisoner had a set number of times he had to turn the crank a day to earn his food. Depending on the punishment, what their crime was, what their prison sentence, they had more numbers that they had to crank this crank. But unlike the wheel, there was no point, and all it did was turn paddles in a deep box of sand. So it was literally just work for the sake of work.
Wow.
And then that's how you got your food, which was probably bread crust and crap.
You'd think it would be something like holes,
dig holes, dig holes,
dig
right?
holes,
You're like
dig the graves,
your own,
yeah.
Right. So all of this would be done in total silence, and if you spoke, you would be punished with more labor or with physical corporal punishment. Another one is called picking oakum, which was separating fibers of old ship rope and rigging, and you could only pretty much manage 2 feet a day. So think about 2 feet this big of a huge rope, and you're just untangling those sharp, rough, awful fibers. And I guess what it was is they would make money because the prison would have all these fibers pulled apart, and then they would sell it back to ship makers, and it would be used as like insulation between wooden planks and like the sideboards to make them watertight. So it was like chinking that they'd fill in.
Yeah,
that's kind of cool. So yeah, they'd like take crap, make them peel it all apart, and then make money off of it. So anyway, that was interesting. I had to look that up because I was curious. Like, this guy's got to exist somewhere.
Yeah,
working on the chain gang. Working on the chain.
I just keep thinking of that movie Holes.
Oh my god, right? I love that book.
I
it was
love
so good.
Me too.
It was a really good book. I remember it from I think they made us read it in like 5th grade when it came out.
Yes, yeah, and I think Avery. I think Troy read it, and now I got to get Avery too. But yeah, there. Go do your manual labor.
Go
your
dig
hard
your
labor.
holes.
Yeah, go dig your holes.
Looking for treasure. So after she got out of prison, she went back to being a nurse again, and she did like some home care nursing, and she was fine to these patients. And it was sprinkled in and out with trips to mental asylums, but these always coincided with when she was getting people were getting a little suspicious of her. So then she would try to commit suicide and get put into a mental hospital while the heat was on. And interestingly enough, she actually ended up becoming an asylum nurse, but now it was probably because she's like trying to learn how to be genuinely crazy outside of like being raised with her mother. She learned really well. And unfortunately, when people are truly evil, they don't really learn in prison. They just learn how to not get caught again.
Yeah.
And so this time it didn't teach her anything. And So she stopped calling the doctors to get the death certificates.
Of course she did.
Of course she did. And so she just would throw the babies into the river.
What?
Yep, she would just wrap them up in like packages and stuff, and when they passed away, she would just wrap them up and just dump them in the river.
Wow.
Yeah. She was heartless, ruthless.
Wow.
I mean, obviously.
Yeah.
I know. I'm sorry. It's rough, but it's just crazy because like this wasn't a norm, you know.
Yeah.
There were people that did this because they wanted to save babies.
Yeah.
And they earned money. And then later, like I said, like foster care in the States, I'm not sure of anywhere else, but you know, you get paid and it's to help with the child's expenses. Like it's
buy them
nothing
clothes,
for
buy them food,
you know, and they get health care and all those services that that money doesn't have to go to because they have it. So it pretty much did the same thing. They got a stipend as well. In 1890, Amelia is taking care of a baby, of a nanny. And when the woman came to check up on the baby, she had a feeling that, I mean, like, come on, we know what our babies look like.
Yeah.
She had a feeling like, this is not my kid. And so she pulls the pants off of the little baby to check for a birthmark that's on the baby's hip. And of course, it wasn't there. So she tells the police, and now this is really the police are like, dude, we have to look into this woman. You know, this is too much. It doesn't matter if they were poor. They did care.
Yeah.
And so, well, she tries to kill herself again by drinking laudanum, which is like a super crazy, it's like one of the first filtrations of opium. So it's really strong. And so she tried to drink that. But the crazy part is, while she fed babies the syrup, this opium syrup, she was addicted to it herself. I mean, because even if you're mentally unstable, that's gotta like mess you up. So she was a drug addict, and so because of her tolerance, the laudanum didn't kill her. Because she really does try to kill herself. But in this case, it didn't work. And so she's constantly moving. She moves so many times, and her daughter, whose name is they call her Polly, and her son Arthur, son-in-law, I'm sorry, Arthur, stays with them. And so they use a ton of different aliases, and they're always moving around. And police are closing in. Then she tries again. And this is her very last hospital stay, and I actually have a name for it. She's at the Somerset and Bath Lunatic Asylum. And she was there just like a really short amount of time, I think, but it was like still like a year. And when she was released in 1893, basically she said that it was like the hardest, crappiest, boo-hoo stay that she had in an asylum. And look at that, she never committed herself again. So it must have been pretty bad. Good, but like again, that's sad for the other people that are there that need mental help. So every year, you know, she's moving. And in 1895, just a couple of years after she gets released from Somerset, Amelia has help from a woman named Jane Smith, who goes by Granny. She was a much older woman. And she met at a workhouse from her daughter, Polly. My tummy's rumbling. Someone's going to hear it someday. And so she was a helper for the house, the babies, just things like that in general. And they've moved to Caversham. And they live in Reading in Berkshire. That was another one. I was like, I've kept forgetting because I was like, that's not where they live. So they live in Reading.
Okay.
In Caversham in Berkshire. And so Jane, Granny, is pressured. I kind of love it. Her name's Granny Smith. Jane has been pressured by Amelia to let Amelia call her mother in front of everybody because that looks like it would give you a better reputation, to be more trusted. It's like, look, it's like you know, me and my mother and my daughter, and we're like all taking care of these babies. And so it made women
like
more
a family
comfortable.
situation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so The next woman that comes to call in 1896, her name is Evelina Marmon, and she's a really liked barmaid in the town, and she has given birth to a baby girl, and she has put some advertisements in the paper, and she figures like, I'm just going to do that, and it'll be super quick. And so she writes in the paper, she wrote into the Bristol Times and the Mirror newspaper, quote, wanted respectable woman to take a young child. This is it. Super short. And then because her hope is she's going to go back to work and be able to make enough money to save up to then be able to get the baby back. Coincidentally, right next to her ad was another advertisement that read, married couple with no family would adopt a healthy child. Nice country home. Terms, £10. Marmon responded, and a woman named Mrs. Harding got a reply. And she said that she lived in Oxford Road in Reading, and I should be glad to have a dear baby girl, one I could bring up and call my own. We are plain homely people in fair good circumstances. I don't want a child for money's sake, but the company and home comfort. I and my husband are dearly fond of children. I have no child of my own. A child with me will have a good home and a mother's love. Yeah. So Evelina feels like this is a really good choice, but she's hoping that she can convince Mrs. Harding to accept like small weekly payments because she's hoping to get the baby back.
Yeah.
But Mrs. Harding wants one payment and that's it. And so Evelina meets with her, Mrs. Harding, in Chattanooga to collect the money and the baby. But Evelina is so heartbroken that she insists, and they continue on to the train stations together so she can just be with the baby a little bit longer. People who saw her at the train station and when she returned home say that what returned was a broken woman. So it's like so heartbreaking because I can't even imagine the
circumstances.
Oh yeah, it's messed up. And so Evelina did write a letter to check in with Mrs. Harding. And, of course, we know it's Amelia. Amelia wrote back one time telling her that the baby was great and all was well. And there were no more responses to Evelina's letters after that point.
Yeah.
Well, apparently when she got home, she strangled the baby immediately. She used the white edging tape, and her daughter Polly helped her wrap up the baby in a napkin, and then not before she took the edging tape off the baby's neck because she was running low. So she wrapped up the baby, and they put her inside of like a, of course morbid, but I've mentioned it before, a carpet bag.
Yeah.
All these people taking dead bodies in carpet bags. Like, what the heck? So they put her in a bag. The very next day, it is Wednesday, April 1st. It's 1896 still. Another baby came. This one was a 13-month-old boy, which is crazy because that's like a year-old child. Yeah, that's a toddler and walking around, you know. And she strangled him to death immediately.
Oh my gosh.
So this baby's body is also put inside of the same carpet bag, and bricks are put inside of it, and her and Polly take it and they throw it in the River Thames. That's like so many bodies in that river that I have already talked about.
Yeah. It's
unbelievable. Like they just keep coming up, and that's why I was like, it's all crazy because I know the river is like big through that area, but it's just insane.
It's a popular dumping ground.
Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah.
So they dumped the bodies on April 2nd. Well, the crazy thing is that little did Amelia know, on the 30th of March, the unfortunate situation for a bargeman, he pulled a package out of the water. I'm always like, this is everything I talk about. Like, oh, we pulled it out of the water. But at the times, maybe there's something good inside. Yeah. Could have fallen off a boat. Yep. Like, maybe it's something good. They're curious. Well, unfortunately, he opens it up and he finds the body of a little baby girl. So the Reading Borough Police have a really small detective squad, but they are like on it, and they're disgusted, of course, like everybody would be. And so they're determined. The head of the squad is Detective Constable Anderson, and he is able to gather a little bit of evidence from the parcel. There is the train station ticket that's left behind, and I love this. This is so you'll know.
Okay.
They use microscopes, and with microscopic analysis, they can see left, because the water has worn it away, the very faint outline of the pencil name and address of a Mrs. Thomas written on the back of the ticket. I'm like, they used a microscope. Yeah. So science.
Yeah.
So now they've started asking around town. They talked about not necessarily what they found, but the situation. Does anybody have a lot of babies? They got witnesses. They have information. Obviously, a hysterical woman at a train station is going to be something people are going to remember. And so they were able to get some evidence, and they show up at Mrs. Thomas's house. They are met by obvious Amelia Dyer. Thanks to laws not being what they are now, the cops immediately enter her house, and they are hit in the face with the smell of decomposition. Yeah. But as they're looking around, there's nothing inside of there. They don't find anything at all, but they smell it. But luckily for them, there was a ton of corroborating evidence related to babies.
Yeah.
There are telegrams from the mothers that are going to give up their babies. They are pawn tickets for the items Amelia sold that the mothers left their babies with, their clothing, their shoes. She gifted her landlord a pair of baby shoes for the landlord.
Why?
I know. How sick is that? So there are all kinds of receipts for the advertisements, and they find the bundles of white seam tape. Now, unfortunately, this isn't technically enough.
Yeah, it's
getting them somewhere. Absolutely.
Yes.
So because of this, she is I'm sorry. They also find evidence that she was ready to move again. There was evidence that she was about to move to Somerset, but she's arrested. There's enough evidence that they're able to arrest her and start this situation.
Yeah, there's enough to put.
Yeah.
Something weird is going on. So you're coming with us.
Right. With the records that were kept, because she's actually pretty fastidious about all of her papers, the police calculated that Amelia had taken in at least 20 children in the last month.
Oh, so not in total. Oh, my God.
Unfortunately, now they're going to start dredging the river. And they end up finding 6 more babies. All of them had the white tape around their necks. And her daughter and son-in-law, Arthur, are both being charged at this point as well. But Amelia writes a confession on April 16th. And so her daughter, Polly, and Arthur are dropped from this case at this point. On May 22nd, Amelia goes to trial. And now her daughter and son-in-law and Jane, Granny Smith, who she had called mother, if you remember, have all turned on her.
Oh, of course.
And they've all turned on her, and they were saying, the only reason that we participated was because she's crazy, obviously, and we were afraid for our lives, yada, yada. The same thing people say now. Yeah. The same exact thing people say now. And so because of all of the evidence and them testifying against her, which happens nowadays too, the people get away with it, but they give enough information that it gets at least somebody off. Yeah. And convicted. And so she's convicted. But for some reason, I'm sorry, I did not see it. And I looked through a bunch of things. This is going to have so many sources. She's only convicted for the murder of Doris Marmon, which was Evelina's baby girl.
Baby girl, yeah.
I'm thinking that's because that was the first body they found with the ticket that tied to her.
So
you know, it's disgusting, but like, could she have taught that woman taught her what to do? Did she teach her the white binding tape? So that's one they can for sure. And back then, that's all it took.
Yeah.
So, of course, she tried to plead insanity, and that fell on deaf ears because even then, they're like, you were gross. You lied. There was so much lie. There was so much hiding. That's not insanity.
Yeah.
That's hiding. That is being... She's like 65 years old at this point. She's been doing this forever. So, anyway, it only takes the jury 4.5 minutes. They find her guilty.
Good.
And... later in prison, she's charged. She's going to be hung.
Okay.
And after her super short stay in prison, she wrote a confession. Now, I have talked about this before in my scrapbooking, like the commonplace books. So I think this is kind of the same sort of thing. Her confession took 5 notebooks.
What?
That she gave to the priest and the priest only, who came to read her last rites.
Wow.
He said, is there anything else you need to confess? And she handed the notebooks and she said, is this not enough?
Wow.
Yeah. So on Wednesday, June 10th, 1896, she was hanged. I hate saying that.
I know.
It sounds so ridiculous and wrong. She was hanged at exactly 9 a.m. And when she was asked if she had anything to say, she says, I have nothing to say. That's
wow. It. Okay.
So after this, luckily, laws were changed and they were made stricter for adoptions and also for these foster type of agencies. And so anybody in kind of government office could just show up, look for documents, proper documentation, search your food pantry, to be able to check. 2 years after Amelia's execution, I'm gonna fudge. I cannot say this. It's a railway worker. I did it.
You did it.
I was a railway worker. That's what ends up happening. A railway worker inspecting empty carriages in between train rides, just like they do on airplanes and trains now, found a package that was left behind. He opens it up, see if there's any tags or anything like that, and inside is a cold and wet 3-week-old baby girl, but she's alive.
Oh,
she's totally alive. No, it's okay.
Oh.
She's I mean, that was dirty of me to do, but she's totally alive because he did not think she was alive. So it was the daughter of a widow, and the baby had just been given to a woman named Mrs. Stewart for 12 pounds. So as we remember before, that like 5 or 10 pounds was like over a couple $100.
Yeah.
So it was a bit of money. Who had picked up the baby in Plymouth, and apparently she left the baby on the very next train. She literally just picked it up, left it in the bag. It just left it there, got off the train and left. And according to sources, it was Polly, Amelia's daughter, the one who said she had nothing to do with it. And that's it.
That makes sense.
They never caught her. They never anything.
Wow.
So here is the absolute worst part. And I'm sorry. It's so terrible. But pretty much what police think, if she had continued to be active that entire time, it was to 300 or 400 babies is what they think. And it makes her one of the most prolific serial killers in history.
Wow.
I know, it's super gross. I'm sorry. But it's crazy because I think I've talked about the baby farms. It's just, like I said, it's such a gross word, but I don't know why they called it that, but it was a thing. And I've mentioned it several times, and it's crazy. And the freaking bodies in the river, like, it's sad. But it's something that keeps showing up when I look up all my Victorian crimes. It's
there's another one that's like that, but wow. And it wouldn't surprise me that her daughter continued on the job, because it's like easy money, I guess, if you're just like, oh, all I have to do is kill a baby if you're that cold-hearted. Wow.
And she'd already been exposed to it for her
whole life. So, yeah. Wow. Well, good job. That was, no, it's fine. I know you saw my face the whole time I was like,
it was.
I was like,
I know, it was like, I
As
I
a
mean,
mom,
the way
it's
that I wrote. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. As a mom, and it sucks because a lot of the cases that I have like written down for future, it ends up coming to those. I'm like, I can't yet, and it sucks
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
not like all horrifically graphic things or anything like that. Like this was bad
It's
enough, but it
just
wasn't like
gives you a
butchered.
bad-
But it's just it
It
sucks.
gives you a pit in your stomach.
Yeah,
just like, my
because
tummy
it's
hurts.
just so, and it's just unbelievable the amount and of carelessness, and it's just like gross.
Yeah. Wow. Well, good
Mhm.
job. I'm disgusted.
Thanks. It was terrible.
Well, with that, stay crafty.
And not crimey.
Bye.
Bye.